on the situation in Ukraine after the Russian invasion of Ukraine last year, and it was really an unfortunate thing to happen. It's the 24th of February. That's invasion of Ukraine sort of escalated the hostilities that have been working between Russia and Ukraine. But I think for me, what was also quite tragic is the killings that happened, the crimes that have been committed against children, and the refugee crisis in Europe. I think arguably the largest since World War II, displacement of persons. And a lot of things happened after that. I think there was widespread international condemnation region. And the UN also adopted a resolution again condemning what had happened, and Russia, of course, subsequently being expelled from the Council of Europe. I think we also witnessed several countries imposing sanctions on Russia. I think just last month, one of the most significant moves was the issuance of the warrant of arrest against Putin for the crimes against humanity, including genocide and deportation of children. And I think those are some of the things that have happened. But I think what is interesting also from us in South Africa and Africa generally is the fact that South Africa is hosting the BRICS summit in August. What is going to happen, to come to South Africa, what will be South Africa's response? Is the international legal framework adequate enough to respond and to ensure accountability? And what is South Africa's position from a political perspective regarding the Russian invasion of Ukraine? I'm just sort of laying out some of the issues, but to set the stage for us, France going to the 4 months, and ask Yaku to introduce the delegation to Ukraine. After that, from France is also the speakers from our side there in the University of Pretoria, essentially giving our perspectives as outsiders and South Africa's perspectives as such. Then we'll hear from you the insights, what Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. And it's a privilege. Welcome. University of Pretoria Center for Human Rights. Introduced by Jacob, so we look forward to that. It is a great privilege to have someone from the Center for Civil Liberties here. We all know from your work and inspiration. And let me just give a little time frame for our work. And for Nolo, who's alive, that quite literally. So she's in the lounge, and I will be grateful for that reason. But I think personally, because we want to hear from you, by the space. But what we are working towards is like now finishing because we want to serve which we introduce the students, the master students. We have a course running people from all around 30 already. And just make a few remarks that which is one of this. So that is our of time constraints as important as the program which allows us to go. So we will meet with students from different areas. They are master students, they have people who experience in the space. So
that's the best students. Yeah. I will tell them a lot about Africa. Because I follow it since my childhood.
Fantastic. But we will, in all of these things, unfortunately, we have limited engagement time. But for our own side, it's a center. Thank you very much, Charles, for celebrating this in our long-standing relationship. We obviously acknowledge and appreciate the invasion is against the international law. That is very clear. And I think that this kind of principle now that we see utilizing self-mind is right. In the repercussions also in a whole way in which multilateralism is involved. Questions, I think, rightism have been posed around the security process, composition, continuously. Maybe that could be with positive effect if one has to always think that some positive situation. But I think what we try to look at is, our complex relationship as as soon as that can be one advice, your guidance, because as you know, South Africa position in this regard, and this possible visit of President Putin, and giving us your contextual advice also about how we see a South African society, what's the basic institution, not sharing that with
I give advice, my students, so it's not about speaking, but if you want each students want to prevent something to be done, what's the name? Again. In my country, it's Ethiopia.
That's stage. That's all it's
in my country. It's about you, no interference.
No, that's a very useful start point of our discussion. But these two words and with these type of constraints, maybe I feel that you introduce the delegation to us. The fact is that our experts, including Bonolo, will decide quite history about our views as they stand together. So obviously, yes.
Thank you, Franz and Louis, especially for making this happen. We really appreciate it. It's always lovely to be the place where it's studying and also the center as my personal employer. The safety and the part. And so I'm very honored to introduce the delegation friend. Is visiting South Africa the last week, meeting with government, civil society, community, to not just an immigrant group of people, but people who really speak to the realities of the atrocities that continue to occur on a daily basis. And on my far left is Professor Alexei Alan from the University of Pretoria. He's a political scientist and has been involved in all kinds of fascinating areas of study, and he's also the founding director. And Alexei helped me as the Democratic Initiatives Foundation.
But I would say I was participant and survivor of civil revolution.
So I think part of that is to introduce Sasha and so on from the treatment of disabilities and scars from that sense of disabilities as a distinguished record documenting human rights violations during the current war, but going back to 2014. So this name drop similarities and some of the recent recipients, co-recipients of the yes. This is Andrew Sharples. Think network who based in the UK and has been working with the delegations of Ukraine for a number of years, providing them with opportunities to engage across some of the global south with governments. So most recently, I'm a guest visitor to Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, Argentina, but it's all Kenya. Yeah, that's correct. So where they've and again, I think it's a very valuable engagement because we don't see and hear and meet a lot of Ukrainians in this kind of culture. And I think it is important in terms of building an objective narrative of the understanding. Also, the purpose of the visit is really to present what they experience in Ukraine, the real life dramas that
also, their work around documenting war crimes, but also to engage and to try to understand these various positions within civil society and government, to be able to form an opinion from the Ukrainian perspective, and then to see possibilities of future collaboration. Previously, met with the child law, so I thought before we would discuss this. Okay, so Monoro is the manager of the democracy and civil engagement. So the one person, as I said, she's on her way to some bank in Nairobi. But Monoro, if you hear us, please, the floor is yours. We hope you still have enough minutes to get your points across. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning from OR Tambo. As Professor Franz has said, I'm on my way to Nairobi for an AU ECOSOC mission. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Bonolo Makale, and I'm the program manager of the Democracy and Civic Engagement Unit of the Center for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria. What the unit that I head basically does, it spearheads the center's work on democracy and works with African Union organs that are located in Midrand, South Africa, but also with ECOSOC in Lusaka, Zambia. We also do quite a lot of work on elections. So I'm just gonna give brief opening remarks, and I may dash out before the end of the meeting because my flight is boarding quite soon. And again, thank you so much for the visit and for joining us. I think it's an important conversation to have. It's an ongoing conversation, an important conversation to have. Since the beginning of the Russia invasion into Ukraine, there had been scrutiny towards Africans' reactions from the West, particularly the US and Europe. Views from the continent, of course, vary from country to country, with many states taking a non-aligned position. And of course, understanding the stance within a multipolar and highly interdependent world can be very complex. We saw African votes in the UN on the war revealed a sharp division between countries. We saw countries like Algeria, Tanzania, and South Africa that underscored the importance of diplomacy without condemning Russia's actions. The high number of abstentions was widely interpreted as a sign of Russia's influence or evidence of the growing anti-Westernism of African governments and citizens. However, in my view, this view wrongly assumes that Africa is a political monolith. It suggests an underlying expectation by the West that states that the continent should align with them because of the West's prominence in development and humanitarian aid, and of course their shared history. But I think within that African context, and if we are to bring the African Union in this conversation, a question that we should continue to ask is whether or not Africa's tentative stance on the war shows a rejection of the African Union key principles, such as respect for territorial integrity and peaceful settlement of disputes. But on geopolitics, I think it is important for us to ask the question that how are African states benefiting from proclaiming non-alignment? Although the conflict reveals an extent of the continent's dependence on Ukraine, or rather dependence on grain and fertilizer from Ukraine and Russia, it does not compare with the Western aid that enables Africa to continue to function. Of course, the conversation about foreign aid and aid conditionality and its impact on African policies is a different conversation. But yes, we must also note that the West does contribute its foreign aid to enable certain countries in Africa to function. And of course, African states' position is not without contradiction, and this doesn't come as a surprise given many norms and values on the continent of 54 countries. They aspire to an international order on rules and not force, while at the same time sympathizing with Russia and China, which, you know, challenge this order in different reasons. The contradictions illustrate the crisis of African multilateralism. While some countries propose a rule-based international order that favors consistency and predictability, others prefers cohesion and force. Again, this suggests a dividing line in the African Union, but the line is blurred. For an example, some states pushed for Chad suspension from the African Union following the unconstitutional transition in April 2021. And the same countries pushed back against Zimbabwe's suspension following the 2017 coup that overthrew the late President Robert Mugabe. And so a question again on the African Union is that I keep wondering, what will the African Union reactions be if a powerful country invaded another country in Africa? But on South Africa in particular, I want to briefly look at South Africa's position and unset position. I want to reflect briefly on the South African government and the African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance, which is the main opposition party in South Africa, and the EFF and their position on this matter. The South African foreign policy stance on the conflict continues to be that of impartiality. The Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, stated, and I quote, "South Africa believes the only path to peace is through diplomacy, dialogue, commitment to the principles of the UN Charter, including the principles that all member states shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means. As mentioned above, there are complex reasons behind Africa taking non-aligned stand. And the question then is, why is South Africa neutral? Historically, you'll remember that Pretoria and Moscow has a long historical ties dating back to the times of apartheid in South Africa. The ANC, as a governing party in South Africa, has a long-standing relationship with Moscow forged during the liberation struggle against apartheid. The Soviet Union backed the liberation movement with arms and money, standing in contrast to the West labeling the ANC a terrorism organization. But also South Africa and Russia are both members of BRICS. South Africa, being the most industrialized country in Africa, has been a trade partner of Russia for many years. South Africa's exports to Russia actually were valued at about $586 million in 2020, while Russia's exports to South Africa total to about $506 million. You can make your own conclusion why South Africa has chosen to take a neutral position. And then to the Democratic Alliance, the country's main opposition party. The party has also been quite vocal in its position to the government's neutral stance, calling on South Africa to side with Ukraine. The party leader argued that government cannot be seen to be supporting Russia's aggression. The country needs to put, the country's needs before party politics, right? And recently, of course, you would know the ICC issued an arrest warrant for President Putin. And while the ANC remained silent, the EFF said that the Russian leader was welcome in South Africa. And while the two opposition parties have their different reasoning for the support or no support of Russia, two sides of the same coins are being articulated here. One on the Democratic Alliance side is that the formulation and articulation of South Africa's policy on this matter, intrinsically tied to party politics, bring a blurred line of state issues and party issues. And on the EFF side, the EFF argues that the ICC's unfair pressure towards African countries that hinders diplomatic relations that can push Africa's countries towards development opportunities. And I mean, one could argue that the both positions are valid to some degree. Now, from our point of view, particularly if we are to center democracy in this conversation, and I want to say this upfront, that Putin's actions are a very clear violation of sovereignty and democratic freedom. Putin has categorically ignored democratic values prior to the invasion, within Russia's internal politics and has infringed on many Ukrainian democratic and human rights. When it comes to the democratic agenda, there seems to be a rising trend of treating democracy and development as mutually exclusive. And this perpetuates the idea that one having their bread should be separate from one practicing their freedom, when in actuality, one should be able to eat their bread and be free at the same time. Treating political system and economic system in silos open up the emergence of populist ideas, which directly threatens democracy. The neutral position that many African countries are taking is done with the prioritization of economic relationships over the status of political culture, and this includes South Africa. And whenever there are conflicts, there are always groups that are disproportionately affected by these things. Think about what happens in the Democratic Republic of Congo when there's conflict. This mostly affects the vulnerable group, which is women and children. And you will see that many of those, of course, will seek refuge in South Africa and have been subjected to conflict situations in their own countries. And they come to South Africa and they are met with immense xenophobia. But while I'm on that xenophobia conversation, and this may be an uncomfortable thing to say, but I'm going to say it nonetheless. While the Ukrainian victims of war never asked for this gross violation and their human rights to be violated, we cannot ignore the tiered victimhood from this war. The racism and xenophobia faced by African descendants and people of color during the conflict within Ukraine have not gone unrecognized. The prioritization of white Ukrainians over people of color when it comes to asylum seekers have been disappointing. And I mention this because I think it is important for us to admit that two things can be true at the same time. We recognize the violation of human rights, the gross violation of human rights of the Ukrainians, but we equally recognize what African descendants and people of color had to endure during this war. So as I conclude, I just want to say, here's what remains true. Russia has violated human rights of many of those living in Ukraine, and democracy remains the best form of governance in which people's rights are protected and people have a voice and people can be heard. And like I said earlier, this is an important conversation to have. And sometimes these conversations makes us uncomfortable because we have this idea of choosing binary positions. But I'm hoping that through this convening and through this space, we'd be able to figure out how do we get to a place where we answer these difficult questions about Africa's position and particularly South Africa's impartial policy on this matter, but also how do we move forward to ensure that the rights of Ukrainians are protected and not violated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonolo. And I think we definitely will have responses and we will convey those to you if you are already leaving, but I think we'll just complete a round of questions. We are very privileged. But in how many minutes, Bonolo, would you be leaving? More or less, if you estimate how...
I need to leave in the next 5 minutes, Prof. Okay, so I think it's really important to talk very frankly about the issues which you mentioned about standing.
Colleagues, I need to speak about the question of persist. First of all, for Ukrainians, for our state, persist is impossible. I mean, it's banded, it's criminally prosecuted, and it's absolutely for us not acceptable. So one situation which happened because of situation of equation happened with one student. I'm trying to exactly find his personally. But it's happened not only with him. I mean, situation with a station with a crowd of people, and some of them following before the train was not going, but before the train. It's not happening with a black person or something like that. So it's happened with a new person. All of that was taken. Any state orders to separate, not give the opportunity for people with other color of the skin or other race in Ukraine not exist, and exactly appeal to police to give us all the information about how they, if they see exactly such situation. They give two response, and all of it they just hope the person be back in the station. We made interview with different students. We have foreign students from Asia, from Arabic country, from African country, mostly medicine university, and they give us the interview and explanation how they see the situation. Because again, for us, if you will find any option for the racism happen for us, it will be like huge problem, huge situation. So they give us understanding that there was not exactly color of skin or something like that, but someone black man going somewhere where the women and children need to be first. So they will just separate not because they have other skin color, but because that was a man. And same, we asked black girls, they don't have any problems at all. And second problems, one was Ukrainian border guard. They pass all of them, even we'll speak about that was a group of Arabic men trying to go there exactly to the border before women and children. So they pass, later, just later, but they pass. But that was a problem for Poland and Ukrainian border guard, because they don't have any documents to cross this border. With Ukrainian, they have agreement, they have a legal possibility to be in the territory. So that's why I need to just talk about it. Ukrainian never, historically, we never have a problem with a group of people with our color skin. We have a question with relationship with Jewish and Roma, but it's other topic. So that's why I need to tell that all of these stories, which Ukrainian racism happened during the war, it's not true.
Not also, again, that's something we have this special, very specific case. Yeah, where human rights activists and just imagine the situation when we have the exodus of 12 million people, it's during the first days of, so it was no, and there was a very strict to women and children first. So same for Ukrainian men. Okay. So it's necessary to be taken into account, because this is one of the narrative which is spread by Russian propaganda that Ukrainians are racist and those. Can I demonstrate to
Explanation.
I think
Let's
okay, because that's actually okay. So this is
thank you for raising that, because it's often raised. So
yeah,
people were about it, but it's good to hear the response. We are also very on our side to have the young Tom. He was previously the ambassador of Belgium to South Africa, so he's not an ambassador, but he preferred after he stood down to stay in South Africa. So he's very much South African now from our perspective, and he's also an extraordinary lecturer in the sector, so it's our colleague. We also involved in our teaching, so we thought that was also be some interesting perspectives from his work. Thank you.
You're from Belgium.
That's correct.
So judging from your name, you're French. So that's why I didn't say who did that. You said Russian. We understand Russian.
I think in Moscow for 3 years, I'm going to speak Russian. This was under the 70s, and if you look at how it changed from 94 to today, I think I will recognize they are. It will also change to a more area. But in Moscow, that was it really Moscow went to be 5 years in India, and I mentioned because I'm serving these investigations in addition. was very exciting, and that's when I learned to appreciate the South African delegation. 20 years later, it's maybe they have a very good mediation capacity, very honest, very well supported partners of the country. So in most of the for in my career, it's also very important for the so with my students, we go to so we try to keep it in that course legal as possible, because I want to move my students away from the generalities that they hear and read the press, that they hear from statements, that they hear. I want to draw their attention to all the legal elements. And we take Ukraine, of course, as a case study in policy. And then we were actually taken back to the days of France and Ukraine and the relationship with Russia and how the Crimea was taken terms, the Russians then given back.
So you know all?
But the student is not my student.
Let's see.
Not the family standing the way to Russia, how they had before. Okay. So this I want to break away from that informed opinion, and that is far too easy. It is just you slogans in the press, statements, and so I think I'll take them through that. So we're going through all the agreements that Ukraine signed with Russia in the 1990s. I take them through the treatment, the treaty where Ukraine, the non-proliferation treaty, the cooperation and friendship treaty. So to show them how Russia actually committed itself to respect territorial integrity, to respect the sovereignty of Ukraine, and it's not only once, 2, 3 times in different treaties in the 1990s. And that's where I come back to the saying that this was possible. There was the NATO friendship agreement with Russia, there was the cooperation council, NATO and Russia sitting in the same council. So that's all that city talk about the president. I try to move away from that as well. I want to give my students a full picture of what is the NATO national relationship, which actually grounded in Ukraine in 2014. And say that Ukraine over the decade or so I'm trying to give them a full picture. Also mentioning that actually the NATO fear with Russia didn't join that. It was only 3 Baltic states. Russia, they created the same frontier, Russia and NATO. There's nothing with Russia. This is a political entity that takes its own time. So I want to take the students away from it. So we go through all the legal aspects. We go through all the resolutions here. So we try to keep it as legal as possible. So, and then in general, I want to express that human rights, protection and promotion of human rights is not counted. This is like vis-a-vis interest, national interest, but protection of human rights is a national interest. You cannot, the interest of the country is not served if you let human rights be violated. Governments, there is no education, there is no employment, things are crumbling from one thing comes the other. So human rights, it's not making choice. Because too often in South Africa, that is becoming interests like, for example, the fluctuation without conflict. The interest into reduction is the nature. So, and I really, the students I have are very, very low. If you all that, and actually, as a general feeling, there are two conclusions that I draw from it, from that coming out, is that they, of course, they all condemn the aggression, but on the certain legal basis, violation of the charter, violation of agreements, the Geneva Conventions, we go through all of this. And secondly, what they don't accept, actually, or they would like to South Africa to be more, not so much of a defensive, it's actually saying all the time, and doing anything, or saying all the time, you are not lying, or not doing anything, what purpose does that? So I try to take them through this as well, to get a very good idea of the subject is that we wonder a little bit whether South Africa didn't do itself a disservice by aligning themselves in a group of countries that are not our size for South Africa. These are big cats, big boys and girls. These are the things that are a certain complex of superiority, international superiority. We like to be seen in the big. But our my students, we look at it, but we have been in Mexico and Turkey and Vietnam, with a number of middle-sized, middle-income, middle-economic countries. That is the number one. Not number five, but number one, number two. We sold our soul. Mandela whispered the language. So that's the thing of my students. We are so they're very, very, very sick. So I think they appreciate all what you have to say. The last point I would like to make is that we go to the students also to all the different documents in the ANC, because actually the ANC is very influential on their sectors. So we take them through all the foreign policy documents. From 1994 to 2022, last year. And then you see that they all change in tone. In 94, it was human rights and foreign policy, and the C then said that even if we have to drop bilateral relations with countries, also 97, you see them saying we must look at the balance between having relations with countries and having to realize it. And then this what we do and so on. It's a human rights almost a document. All of it do disappear. We prefer not to talk about human security, which is probably more we should less human security. So they human rights. And the last foreign policy document is a very obstructionist, far side taking document in all. It's mainly an anti-West. So I see also the policy of Russia is all since NATO and the EU are so supportive of Ukraine. South Africa owns the side of the policy makers, but they cannot do this. They cannot support it. But this is, and secondly, of course, if we start our historic topics.
Why is it cannot support?
Because it is seen as a West. As a West. Ukraine wanting to join NATO. But I explained to my students that this is only an issue after 2014. Because your country was very controversial about NATO. You went up. You said, yes, we want to be there. Next year, you said,
The official status was one country, and Ukraine didn't want to.
exactly. It's because the enter NATO. Exactly. And then Russia beat into Crimea. On enemies, people are looking for security. And this also in the picture, because Ukraine should be seen not only as a Russian relationship. I told you that it used to be part of the kingdom of there's a deep relationship also between Austria and so the connection between Budapest and Vienna it's like, so I try to explain the Ukrainians in between their historic sympathies and alliances as such with Rome to that all European area and the Balkan and it is in Moscow where only the in 1650. So last point, mediation, yes, but what is actually the aim of this? Is it just to be informed, or is it to see? Because there are three choices for it. For example, we did in the next general assembly, they changed the birth. They changed. So there are possibilities. People can change the birth. From abstaining to support it in the other one or or they say mediation or they say sympathy that is there's no cost involved and this so actually it's not either you change the vote or you mediation again. Told you they are monsters in mediation. It's in the genes, it's in there, it's in everything. But over the years, we have jumped our infrastructure. In the 2000s, in Burundi, governments had a million of academics and people around them. So there were negotiators. But behind them was sitting an entire team of academics to give them the right information, documents to help with because and that entire structure has not
What?
Maybe out of cost. But also because I think in the same way that is not that inclined anymore to be associated with private sector. Not only in the business property, but also in this same feeling that the private sector, so that NGOs, civil society, to be with them together in the common cause for mediation was possible under no because they are very far and making us very so it was a very intellectual and very well argument in these matters. I don't think that we need to go to an association with the same way with guys. We pay for your home, we pay for France, you people, let's go to Ukraine and let's go to Moscow. We drop everything said before, seeing what we can do on the basis of Zelensky's peace plan that he presented to the UN or Moscow. Whether we do, I'm not sure. My colleagues must contradict, but would our government be willing to put a poll out tomorrow and say, you guys join us in 3 months, we are moving, and we work out, use it all around the day, we work out the mediation plan. It's just talk. Thank you very much. So let us just like the last person and then Dr. Lisa is working with us on the website, but she and the is working for justice, issues around genocide, so she will take it to the level.
And even some people that have to move. So as Francis said, I specialize in international criminal law and genocide. So I'd like to hear from you. So what is your experience? What is your research showing? Are the atrocities happening? Because at the moment there's been a lot of this outside view, a lot of war crimes. The serious violence work of transfer and deportation of children. But that in itself is the genocide. So also the ICC chief prosecutor had a study on relating to, and they said it is investigating other crimes within the jurisdiction of the court. And also, along with that, I put three main focus. Sorry, I should have started with that. The first one is the accountability measures for international crimes. What is your research showing? The other is a little bit it's different, I think, sitting here in South Africa and doing the reviewing and interpreting what I hear and to your experience. So from my perspective, there are very strong indicators, particularly pointing towards genocide. And then very alarming things are also sexual violence during the commission of international crimes. How sexual violence is being used to perpetrate international crimes. War crimes, very strong indicators for genocide, and then as a kind of humanity. So there are certain events, certain indicators of that very strict requirement to prove genocide, that specific intent to destroy, and then also the type of genocidal acts. There are some that points towards that. And your work that you're doing, the information gathering, is there strong indicators of that? Because even though we've got the arrest warrant for war crimes, there's nothing preventing a further one. With Sudan, it was also interesting. It's only enough evidence to create a reasonable grounds to believe war crimes, crimes against humanity, and later we have the genocide one. So, as I'm sitting here, I'm hopeful that there will be others further arrest warrants. And then also there's been, even within Ukraine, the investigations by the Attorney General, the domestic prosecutions, but there's also very strong support to the European Union that you are working with. So what are you think, your sense of would there be enough for genocide? Because for me, sitting here, but that's happening. It's already happening. It was. There's certain indicators that with every single genocide that's happened throughout history, obviously they're different, but they translate in a different way with the humanization of history to not just keep the denial of Ukrainian historic persecution, the Holodomor, good example, and how that has been distorted, consistently distorted, and also the rhetoric within regimes, either saying yes, worst genocide, absolutely. So just not to your experience. Then the second point, also like Anita said, pointed out with South Africa's position. Now, South Africa, it has been friends with Russia, with historic ties, historic friends, consistent rhetoric it's becoming more pronounced and consistently saying, and taking a stand that they actually are the policy of diplomacy, peace, and
join maneuvers. So
yes, there is something that it's also like that. And can you say you want to have value? It's your friend. Speak. Come. Speak. This say you do it, say you're someone good at it. It's your friend. Once you, I made a conversation with us where we say that if it's your friend, surely you can tell your friend that this what you're doing is not right. I like you. So so there's collaboration, one example of collaboration and portraits. Yeah, what would you like to see at the period?
Two points.
Before they would be
It's just the confirmation of the function. So obviously, and quickly trade. These trade figures are communication. Trade is very small. It's small and Russia is different, so you don't have to check.
Let's go find the book.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think thank you so much for talking, which was
the other is provoking issues. Yes, it's
so I think we'd love to hear from you now. Yeah, so I think it's much to say. I think that with the agreement of my colleagues, Lexi will give a basically historic perspective, and then Sasha will say the review of their work and the sensitive possibilities.
Yeah,
and on stage, yes. Yeah. I think those, yeah, will respond to those questions. Everything amazing. And can we share this?
yeah, that was yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I that's fun. No, it's nice.
You expect from the election. Because maybe if France put something together and because one doesn't have to take what he got something but maybe professionally sometimes he done and
Okay, oh, that's not what they want to show. Okay. Let me yeah, do this. That's it. So the slides. That's it. Okay, so this is just an issue of racial, this issue of racial discrimination immigrants. So this is not very important. This is just a case of what I met the guy in Kyiv suburb. So you see, he's an Ukrainian. in Ukrainian.
It's traditional.
So, yeah, because today I was told that this is Nigeria. So, second time, Kenya. So, it's Ukraine. He also wears Ukrainian, speaks wonderful Ukrainian language. So, this is just, you see occasional food. And this is more, okay, more, say, official. This guy is Ukrainian MP. His name is Sean.
Yeah,
MP, member of parliament. Sean. Bill, and so he's half Ukrainian, half Rwandese, and his father actually died to genocide in Rwanda. So he's well known in Ukraine because he's Olympic champion in wrestling. Okay, so now he's a member of the ruling party, and you don't see it, but on his T-shirt it's written "I'm Afro-Ukrainian." So, this is just anecdotal, but so many interesting things were raised. Let me try my presentation in for you with, and I will take into account that you are lawyers. So, first question, choose you. Was Russia a member or founding member of the United Nations? Was Russia here? Was Russia a member, founding member of the United Nations? No, don't. I know you know. Why are you silent?
So you was in Ukraine.
So I'm asking them. So Russia wasn't. It was the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union plus Ukraine plus Belarus for recognition of these republics with a contribution, not Russia. So actually now so became member of the United Nations only after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And there's very interesting legal discussion whether they have legitimate right to have the seat in the permanent council. Why? Because it belonged to the Soviet Union. And there was no formal procedure of passing into the seat to Russia. So it's interesting from legal point, because from, there is real politics, so it's
new documents that we told about that it's not existed. Procedure to exactly that Russia citizen of the Soviet Union, and we sent the documents which because it's not exist like I don't know some agreement that Russia will have all before
okay, so now Ukraine was a founding member, and it was Ukraine, so which was one of the representatives from socialist camp in the UN Special Committee against Naval. So there were two countries from socialist camp, Hungary and Ukraine. Not Russia, even not the Soviet Union, which is again also an interesting point. So actually it was Ukraine which was sponsored many resolutions against apartheid. So my question, when you're talking about historic relations with Russia, this is not correct. You may say it was Soviet Union, which was different from Russia. And this is Sintisa Feniana, first black full secretary to power, started here, he wrote very interesting. Okay, so Ukraine contributed a lot to your struggle against colonialism. But actually, now we expect to have some support for against former colonial empire. That's a very interesting case. I was hesitating whether to provide it to you, but it's interesting for you as a lawyer. So this is a lawyer. He was a lawyer, who in you see, in the Soviet Constitution, as I said, the Soviet Union was a colonial empire. But how it waited. So formally in the Constitution, it was written that the republic has the constitutional right to secede. So these guys said, okay, fine, here's the Constitution. I'm starting to promote this idea. He was sentenced to death. And he spent 27 years, 27 years, and it was non-violent, total non-violent stuff. And he became one of the authors of the One Delegation. That's a and he said it's possible to be angry with communists if they are in favor. So if you want to reach that, okay, I'm ready to shake hands with this communist. You just said that, okay? Now, but let's, okay, so this is basically great peacekeepers in Africa, very important, huge peacekeeping missions. I don't know if you know that Ukraine was one of the largest indigenous peacekeeping missions in Africa, was in fact 500 in Sierra Leone. See? So now let's talk again about the framework for this war. Why the war happened? The professor has already talked about this. This talked about NATO was bluff and why it was a bluff. Now, guys, please raise your hands. Who knows what is Budapest memorandum? Nobody. Okay. So, do you know that Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons? Anybody knows? Please raise your hand. It's interesting if you know here. No. Okay. Now, let me show you this. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukraine appeared to have the third largest nuclear arsenal. So we gave up thousands of devices, nuclear devices. Okay? And you can, I can put one page Google Budapest map, one page document. Very clear. Ukraine is giving up nuclear weapons, and US, UK, and Russia are guaranteeing our territorial integrity. Very simple, very easy. So the Ukrainians did it, and they decided, okay, now we are friends with everybody. Everybody is our friends. We are not close state. We don't want to join NATO. And what happened? Annexation of Crimea and the war. So Russia were really everything, which is, and it's unique case in this history when the country is giving up nuclear weapons. By the way, a lot of these weapons went to what country against? That's yes. A+. Okay, these people active. I expect it to be very active. So, Russia violated that. Every national document signed Greece, there were many documents where Russia recognized the territorial integrity. So, and that's how the war started. It was not about NATO, Russia and that, no more nuclear state. So, all this bluff of Putin about NATO expansion, come on, Ukrainians didn't be NATO. Swedes and Finns understand good idea with their feelings. Yeah, but look, we shouldn't. It's a lot of details. I'm short of that, so I'm just giving the basics. So basically, what Putin did was totally counterproductive to Russia because Ukraine, Sweden, Finland, they were neutral, and now they decided to join NATO. So why did Putin do? And here we are coming to the issue of history. Oh, one more important thing. So when Russia attacked, one more question for you actually. Do you know who was the natives of Ukraine? Russia next Ukraine. Who was the natives of Ukraine? Native people of Ukraine. You know, but keep silence, please. Anybody? No. Yes. Native people in Ukraine. Russia. Ukrainians? No. No. These people. Oh, so. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. This Crimean towns, who amongst them were Turkish, not Turkish, talking origin, they are the natives of Crimea. They get their own state in Crimea. Russians came over in 18th century. Russia came at the end of the 18th century. They changed the social demographic structure and said, okay, it's ours. And it was what Stalin did in the Soviet Union, he deported the whole nation of Crimean Tatars, separation. Okay, so that was a huge crime. Definitely, Crimean Tatars, they came back on the independence of Ukraine, and now they don't want to be in Russia because Russians made so many crimes. But now Russians are continuing to have against Crimean such a more about it. So in 2014, it started not only the annexation of Crimea, but also persecutions, huge persecutions of Crimean Tatars. But now we are coming, to the question why Putin attacked Ukraine. And the reason is no, I will. Why? Because look, this is because Russians say that Ukraine is part of Russia. Now, look at this map. This is Europe in 1000. You see what is the largest state here? It was called by historians Kiev and Rus, but it was, actually the head of the state was Prince of Kiev. So you see, Kiev. Now, will we be able to find Moscow this time? No, I will not ask you to find Moscow because Moscow didn't exist. So Kiev was at least 600 years older than Moscow. But then, Russian Empire was free. Kiev became a part of Russia. And Ukraine was incorporated in the Russian Empire. The official term for Ukraine in the Russian Empire was, I don't know if you know, Little Russia. So if Ukraine was called Little Russia, now Ukraine was called. Those of you know, I don't try always a student, but they are so. Okay, so Ukrainian language was banned from the public use, and so it was told that Ukrainian people didn't exist. We were part of Great Russian. Now Putin is saying exactly the same. That's important. And that's the reason for this war. So he denies our right not only to have own state, he denies our right to exist because he's saying there's no Ukrainian nation. It's invention of, that West, Austria, Poland, whatever. We do not exist. Which actually, and the idea of people around him, I quote, de-Ukrainianizing, divine Ukrainian states with no Ukrainians. So it creates a background, ideological background. And this is the reason so the former colonial empire is coming back. That's why we are saying to South Africa, please understand our support us to fight for our freedom. And very briefly, so if we're talking about potential South African litigation, yes, you're right. You want to really please do. And there are, it's difficult to end, well, for us to end the war is easy. Russians withdraw from Ukraine. Why? They won't stop. But, there are some peculiar issues which could be done even during, continuation of hostilities. For example, stop bombarding civilians. East, stop bombarding civilians. Second point, secure great weapons. So, what Russian soldiers are doing on clear power? Guys, do you know examples in history when the nuclear power plant is occupied by foreign? Russians were aggressors. Never happened. And it's very, very dangerous because it's the largest nuclear power station. So again, Mr. Putin, destroy soldiers at least from there. So when we hear this polls about mediation from difference, fine, let's do these very things, which are in the real interest for the global security. Show that you can do it, and then we will talk about potential solution. As precondition. Look, I'm not saying it's preconditions, but look, demonstrates the will and possibility. So if Putin is talking about, okay, I'm ready, because Putin is talking, I'm ready for ceasefire, but on conditions that you are ready, also only for it. Okay. So, and we hear from actual South Africa, China, let's have talks without preconditions. If you are serious about those, let's do these minor things which are very crucial for the work. Let's demonstrate that Russia are very serious, and let's demonstrate that as leaders are serious, that it's not just a talk. Okay, I will see. Sure.
There is support between human rights and food organization and academic society.
Many Russia after starting or the
Yes. Yeah, something like that. So basically, the social democracy, since the Russian annexation of Crimea, the Russian party social democratic change, because the Ukrainians that are now in minority, 7%, Ukrainians are about 30-something percent, and Russians have 50+%.
Alexei, there's a question.
Yeah,
Just in the brief, you say that maybe a sentence will cause it more. What is it?
I have said, woman going to come back, and to restore its imperial control of Ukraine. That's the reason. And the reason, and the ideological reason, is that elites in Kremlin, they never consider Ukraine as federal state and Ukrainians as independent nation. Why not? Why now? Specifically now. On that day. Oh, okay. Let me explain. First of all, Russia was prepared for it. And this preparation took several steps, including testing the Western international community. So Putin started aggression against Georgia and seized 20% of Georgian territory, 2008. Then Putin helped Assad in Syria. And Assad, he conducted huge campaign. Okay, then Putin entered Crimea. He was stopped, and Putin started playing on bus. Finally, he saw against what was it? The Western response, very big. And Putin was happy. No, I mean not in 2021. Yeah, so the Americans withdrew from Afghanistan, whole government collapsed, no serious Taliban came to power, and Putin said, okay, that's a very good example from I can do that. And he thought the West would split, the Europeans actually say vote off because a lot of politicians are in but what Putin did, this was so crazy, even for those who were actually President German Steinmeier he recognized his mistake, previous mistakes. He said, no, I don't know. When I saw that it was possible to be good relation to Russia, so there was no response. When they take it's called a peace response. Again, there's a good comparison with what happened before World War II, right? So Hitler, there was a policy of appeasement of Hitler. Okay, Hitler wants something, we need something. Finally, that's what. No response to gangster will provoke to the killer, to the rapist, will provoke further crimes. Sasha.
Okay, by souls and human rights defenders in our organization was founded to labor by standard set of trade continue. So even we still observe how our state works, and it's not they're trying to use exactly war situations. I mean, so human rights much more than it's needed for protection of exactly state. So so in this direction, we still work. That's from 2015, from exactly occupation of Crimea, we started working with major war crimes and human rights violations. And here, together with other organizations, with many coalitions, we documented war crimes now up to 24 February, much more by the scale. Before that, that was Crimea. So here it's a map of Ukraine. Sorry, it's in Cyrillic names, but I'm trying to show you understanding. Here it's Crimea potential. As you see, that's why it will be the biggest problem. Take it back. Take it back to Ukraine, because exactly it's an island connected with Ukraine, just a few places where we have now railway. And that's why Ukraine, that's why Russia so easy exactly cuts these connections and can control. So in 2013, what happened? If you speak about international crimes, it's a huge number of crimes against humanity, and first of all, against the Crimean Tatarians. Why so? Because these ethnic groups have a long history of exactly non-violent struggle. Because when in the 40s, Stalin deported them to Central Asia, for your understanding, so people with my age, my friends, they was born not in Crimea, in Central Asia, because after deportation, they was banned to come back home at the native land, Crimea. That's why they created strong, democracy tradition. They have their own parliament, which called Party, and they have their own government, which called majorities, and representation, like population in these two bodies, same like in Greenland. I mean, what each person now they own deputy who represent them, and it's half women men. For understanding, it's Muslims, ethnic group, but women rights really high level of equality in their tradition. So that's why Russian Federation of 2014 called Majlis and Kuropai terroristic organization. So, like representative bodies of ethnic group, which they don't want exactly now terroristic organization. So that's part. After that, they start our exactly political pursuit, and we collect all the information, trying to help their families. It's more than 300 people was arrested. Most of them previous times, but a part of them that was a journalist and an Ukrainian activist staying trying to do something inside the Crimea. And really important, they did not keep them in the jail in Crimea. They send them out because Russia is huge and they have a lot of jails in the north part of Russia, Siberia, somewhere there. So they sent it these people who was arrested because of political accusation, and they sent them to Siberia. And one more, first war crime in the territory of Crimea, that was exactly recruiting people from Crimea to Russian army, sending them to fight in Donbass against the Ukraine. So it's direct, exactly broken the rules of international law. When we speak about Donbass, we mentioned war crime there. It's exactly battles. It happens. And so we have huge numbers of people that kidnapped and legally detained. There are more than 5,000. All of these people was tortured. They keep in the legal place of detention. One such illegal place of detention is National Guns University base. So just imagine, nice place, yeah, that someone trying to illegally detain people in basement of your university. So Donbass happens like a so-called People Republic because of Russian political, financial, and military support. So the militaries come to Donbass, but 8 years it's all done in the Russian military there. And only now when they come here, yeah, some of them was better for supporting Donbass population. We exactly don't know what the Donbass population, because Donbass population has no any differences from all other. So till 24 February of 2022, we had 10,000 cases of war crimes and crimes against humanity. After this, we have 37,000, and each week we have new and new. This web page, yeah, it's only one because it's our union organization. This statistic, it's live statistic from our database. 37,000, and each week we have plus 1,000. We cover whole the territory of Ukraine. So we have more than 30 human rights organizations joined together in special initiative, which called Tribunal for Putin. It's our web page, so you can go in there after even. And we collect evidence, collect testimonies, all of this. It means episode in our database. That means 3 independent sources which give us information that is happening. Because it's important, you need to understand that someone can think that it's happened there and saying that we need to check. Main idea to separate exactly all what happened to the war. It's not all what happened to the war, it's war crimes or against humanity or genocide. But exactly find the potential war crime. But we did it last 9 years, so we have experience in that. So here you can find exactly, for example, if you will see this rape, it's a kind of sexual violence, because most field mission, it's volunteers. We are not giving them permission to speak with people who are traumatized by raping or other sexualized violence. So if they have information about such case, there's only one category of case, which is very people not usually easy to speak about. All even it's about torturing, even about losing their families because of killing somebody, Ukrainians speak easy. So when it comes to the village and have a translator, they easily speak about. That's why the international journalists have a huge number of exactly materials when they come to Ukraine. So that's why it's not here. These numbers not give you a whole picture. We have special hotline about sexualized crimes. And people there speak with psychologists personally. They check, do they have medicine support, and we exactly collaborate. So Dennis Mukwege Foundation, which we have our representatives, because some survivors from sexualized crimes from Donbass started their members of the speechnet. And now Dennis Mukwege Foundation opens special supporting centers in Ukraine for survivors of sexualized crimes. That's about your question about sexual harassment and just all other we can hear and just understood that okay, Russians choose, sometimes they take a prostitute and just put the marks, yes, down. I mean, if you see all the institutions which need to be protected, be attacked, hospitals, religion buildings, religion built without any separation. So we have this temple, they shooting with this temple. We have exactly Ukrainian Orthodox Church. It's not exactly big look like differences with Russian Orthodox Church, but they try. So yeah.
So
yes,
they are showing in church, the church in association, most of them. So basically, they are sharing their own churches as well. You can believe.
yeah. Okay, so if you see here, you can find the systematics of all of these kinds. Now I will just choose hospitals. That's numerous hospitals was attacked by Russian forces in different way, like east part and south part during the occupation. So that was artillery guns. And if you see this point with two, it's western, it's like western near the Poland exactly territory. Two hospitals there. Why? Why exactly you need to show concrete hospitals? And they use it. We have huge crimes, like for example in Mariupol and in Kherson, where the exactly Ukrainian soldiers who was in this hospital, they have a treatment. That's why they stay there. Was killed by Russian soldiers when they occupied this territory. It's just for example, each day of occupation, every day we have a new issue. So new massacres, new massive rapes, new people going to the legal detention. First of all, they attack target it's journalists, it's volunteers and NGO representatives, because Russian occupation is down NGOs inside their own country, and that's why they NGOs with right defenders. It's really dangerous people in society because they can accumulate, mobilize people around. So they like the target groups and local politicians, like the leaders of local communities. So these people like kidnap and illegal detain by the first line. So you can so this is open web page, so you can go there and just look, because I think it will be interesting for you to look all of the details from law and from this definitions like this, because we do that, we're showing which exactly definition from Roma Statute was using. All of this you can find here. And as I told, it's exactly live statistic review in each day. So just trying to describe what that situation is happened. We are staying in Ukraine during the whole period of occupation. Even when we think that maybe Kyiv will be occupied, we still continue to work, because we understood that we don't know what will happen next, but we need documented as much as we can. That's why we send this information outside of Ukraine. That's still working there. This means we go into the television. So biggest numbers of war crimes happened during the occupation, during the direct contact between Ukrainian population and exactly Russian soldiers. This moment I'm going to be linked with Russian genocide. What we found exactly when we made questionnaire for our survivors, victims, and witness. So Ukrainian soldiers, when they come, they don't stay long. So that's why we don't have a situation where Ukrainian soldiers to some programs or something. First of all, we don't have any like conflict between population and Ukrainian soldiers. They are not stable. And two episodes when we find the information about crimes, but it wasn't war crimes, but it was crimes from Ukrainian soldiers. We exactly opened the case together with General Prosecutor General. So we are not documenting only Russian crimes. We documented all, and after this, we made the conclusions. Exactly. Because when we speak about direct attack, these people have told you who to do that. But when we speak about shelling, some other situations, so you need to have an investigation, and that's will be sure and in which condition did that. So now we have less than 1% episodes which will be connecting with possibility by Ukrainian forces. So and speak about the question how exactly Russian soldiers motivate that they're coming here. So they told that from beginning, Russian soldiers come and trying to explain, we come to protect you. And people trying to ask, okay, for who? And this, when I say this, people speak in one language. It's not big differences. I mean, all the Ukrainians and speak Russian. Not all the Ukrainians can speak Russian, but like 10%, not more, can express themselves by Russian. But they, for whom? From Nazi and fascists. Okay, how you will find Nazi and fascists? If you have a tattoo, like me, for example, it will be enough to I would be a Nazi or fascist. Or if you have a historical book about the history of Ukraine, that was enough motivation to be a Nazi and fascist. If you decide to defend exactly your home, you will be a Nazi and fascist. So, and speaking of Ukraine, it's like you are like totally fascist Nazi. So, and when exactly Russian soldiers trying to separate, after they understood they can separate and try and attack all the people. Exactly, and give one of the village, each building, like each home in the street, would grave of their owners. So they just shooting one by one. And is it genocide? When Putin started speaking about Ukrainian don't need to exist, Ukrainian is fake culture, it's a fake language. It's genocide because exactly any Ukrainian identity, Putin is a group which will be attacked. It's genocide because exactly they have a strategy with the children. It looks like seriously. I mean, they took a strategy, take them, even from parents, because 3 days before they took one new group. The darkness exactly this nuclear, 5 nuclear stations there, and bring them to Crimea. And now we have one more potential group of children who will not be given back. We will have 300 such children. That's when parents, they press down, they exactly speak with parents, you need to send your children from operation to rest in Crimea, to rest in rest campus, but after they don't give it back. Next is a special law, because adopting children, foreign children, Ukrainian children, is foreign for Russia, adopting foreign children in Russia population benefit, because they have their own 35,000 from children. But Putin exactly publicly signed special order for Ukrainian children that Russian families adopt them in forced line. And that's why exactly warning Queen ICC. So, and last time I will speak about genocide. We have exactly a case in International Court of Justice of UN, because you can use this court only if 2 members of UN signed concrete this that was genocide resolution, not resolution. Convention, I think convention 1948, both Ukrainian and Russian side. And exactly we have an appeal against Russia about genocide, and 2 more. We have appeal about fully formed discrimination against women and discrimination of ethnic groups, because Crimean Tatarians is one of the example, but except Crimean Tatarians is this situation with Roma. You don't have Roma, it's long explain who they are. So here I just start. So yes, genocide it's complicated law definition. That's why, and we understood always exist by Holocaust like examples of it. But what happened now in Ukraine is totally like motivation to do genocide. If they will do that at the end or not, it's a question, because we exactly trying not to give them possibility to do that. But that they will plan it, they plan it, they act. So when we speak about genocide, it's like this. And my last, sorry. Okay, so and last one is potential collaboration. You heard a few times here saying this terms that Russia trying like it looks like a relationship. Yes, it's difficult to understand, but it's type of polarization. And I think it's really good topic for exactly discovering from academic really experienced society here. Like, because it's new to we know few our colleagues who not new topic, but it's possible to better deeply about this situation, because yes, it's not the best part comes out from outside of the ocean or something like this, but still it's form of nearness. It's just one, and really to how exactly we can. How exactly we can collaborate. We have a new form of war crimes, exactly. So Russia developed this area. First of all, it's kidnapping of civilians. Second, it's a cyber war between Russia and Ukraine, exactly, which not existing definition like war crimes in cyberspace. And last one is a question about the role of propaganda in war crimes. Because you know that's new Greek process and Tokyo process don't give the answers. Okay, propagandists who create this supporting from population action by the third grade, the German army, and now 20 years of propaganda create this supporting not only for Russian population, but even here, you see a lot of like Russian propaganda, even people who couldn't want to spend the time exactly go deeper. So it's questions how exactly need to be judged people who organize it. It's a manager of the channels, it's a speaking head who like we have police with them. Now you know that the International Criminal Court had a case against the head of Guardian Radio and TV south of the hills, and it will be examined, sure, but still it's very important for understanding how
Yeah, we presented 1 or 2% of it quickly. We have to be there except class 2. Yeah, so we'll get it.
yeah. So I think it's Western city, but just a few issues that came on from the So I think I was so for South Africa, Nigeria. So in Nigeria, I come from a minority tribe, so I've experienced, even in Nigeria, we experience not being part of global bigger tribes. And then in South Africa, also experiencing the phobia in all this form for Nigeria, but Ukraine in order to going through this.
You experience it here.
Absolutely. Yes, and it is not even an evident thing where even members of parliament and people come out openly to speak about it and the need for people who are not South Africans to leave the country. So that is why I understand that it will be difficult for South Africa, who is emphatically and openly xenophobic, and even you see racism in so many instances too. You know, they would easily want to side with the African toxic slant racism, whatever it is. Maybe I'll give you it's actually happening. So it's very difficult to see that South Africa may want to side with Russia. Then if you even go back to my country, Nigeria, where you see they just completed elections where it was an issue of tribes against tribes, where you would say, I have lived Lagos all my life. I was born, I was raised. I know no other place than Lagos.
But when it comes to the elections, I'm not allowed to vote, and because I do not belong to the dominant tribe in that particular region. So I think this issue is just put across India, various different definitions. And then maybe I would also say for your organization, you really like what you do with data. And the fact that you really advocates the data. After your website, it was definitely rushing yesterday. They have special buddy for that, they find this number of website and all I'm going to do something wrong. Yeah, yes. When you do the data, and the fact that it makes it so easy for anyone to really just go there and see what you're doing. And so I think on the letter not to trust. I have learned in maybe my diplomatic journey as I hopefully get into the diplomatic community, not to trust the UK, the US, all the deep powers. When maybe they bring deals like your Budapest Convention, where you handed all your protective powers to another country for safekeeping, I would rather find ways to protect myself, not necessarily look at someone else to protect me, or maybe promises of future protection. And then maybe also for the issue of the current human rights abuses in Ukraine, maybe just a bit but how about this particular time we strategize and go out and find ways to form better alliances that use fighting and prevent the killings that are happening. Because sometimes when I watch what is happening, it really breaks my heart to see people who are defenseless. But I also understand that countries took 27, 30 years to fight for their identity, and robbing someone of their identity is also a major issue. Maybe also
no basically these fights or not to be closed, because we understand if we stop the fight, Russian us and all of us will be killed because we're still trying to be democracy society. We want to manage by outside. That's why I really appreciate the awareness from trust, like totally. Ukraine feel like Ukraine have a position like for. That means we will have a negotiation. That means not all the decisions which Ukrainian will do will like go by this or something like this. But that is our choice, our responsibility. It's really important. That's why for us important last 9 years, 4, 8 years we were more like subject. And now, like object, yeah, and now we are exactly people who do some good act. So really important. So that's why the big West countries started to support us, because when they told us it will be 3 days, we just wait after this we'll discuss, not feel holding this question. No, that's why, and we are not expecting 8 years, not expected. Some will be 5, like because we are really know. It's our choice. And we will do that. We support without, but we support much better, much more perspective than European. And as for me, Ukraine have a possibility exactly doing for whole international system of security. Because before in Ukraine, it's not war. Syria, in Mali, in Georgia, in Chechnya, in Moldova, this place war crimes coming with Russian soldiers. Wagner 10 years exactly 18 years in Africa. That's why it's so important changes in international.
I think order not to be late.
Yes,
Shall we?
yeah, I think we get it up here for now.
I just have a very, very quick comment.
Okay.
Just with regards to the idea of why doesn't South Africa, since Russia is a friend, just have a conversation with their friends. I think what I mentioned in the passing during speech, but there's a very dangerous precedent right now within the internal politics of South Africa, where our foreign policy and internal party politics how our country is engaging with countries all over. And as a result of that, there is this consistent contradiction that's coming up of South Africa, for example, having a very stance with the conflict going on in Israel versus their wishy-washy stance with what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. And a big part of it is, I don't even want to say it's a matter of government policies and government agendas that are doing this, but it has to do with the party itself, the ANC, not even being able to agree within its own structures on their stance with the Russia-Ukraine situation. The party most recently had their own national conference. The conference is a conference in which they elect their government leaders, and prior to that, they have a policy conference. And most of the time, as scientists, we look at that policy conference because it is almost inevitably going to how the party is going to be engaging with national decisions and even international decisions. Now we have a political party that is straining to hold power, and straining to hold power is wanting big money to contribute to hold it, consolidate. As it stands, China and Russia are the biggest contributors of money into the political party in trying to help them sustain their remain governing party. And then even when the 2024 elections, which we know are coming up this year for us, happen, projection is that this political party that is allowing for this miscommunication to happen in the first place is going to be losing its majority. Coalition government is going to be coming up. And within this coalition government, there are numerous different views on how to deal with the situation that's happening with Russia and Ukraine. And so I'm pretty sure during my journey, you're going to be able to engage with officials, etc. But be aware that this friendship talk is not a friendship talk from a state perspective. It's a friendship talk that needs to come from an internal party conversation. And many of whom will lie through their teeth saying that they are supporting you, and in fact, they want their money and personal relationships. So it's very in a very tricky situation. So thank you very much for yours. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. For now, to these 11 students, teachers, and then we'll see the time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.